The role of a technical program manager, often shortened to TPM, sits at the crossroads of technology, project management, and leadership. A TPM is expected to not only manage schedules and deliverables but also understand technical details well enough to guide engineering teams and communicate effectively with stakeholders. In essence, they are problem solvers who bridge the gap between strategy and execution. When preparing for a technical program manager interview, it's important to remember that interviewers want to assess both your technical depth and your ability to manage programs at scale. They will test how you handle ambiguity, prioritize tasks, and communicate across different levels of the organization. Unlike traditional project managers, TPMs are expected to bring a strong technical perspective into their decision-making, which makes the questions slightly more challenging. In this video, we'll go through some of the most commonly asked technical program manager interview questions. For each one, I'll provide a sample structured answer followed by practical tips. These examples will help you practice and refine your approach, whether you're preparing for big tech companies or mid-sized organizations. Question 1. How do you define the role of a technical program manager? Here's the answer. A technical program manager ensures that large, complex projects are delivered on time and within scope while also being technically sound. The role involves program planning, stakeholder management, risk mitigation, and cross-functional collaboration. Unlike a project manager, a TPM has the additional responsibility of understanding technical trade-offs and guiding engineering teams accordingly. Tip: show that you understand both program management and technical depth. Balance both sides in your explanation. Question 2. How do you prioritize tasks across multiple programs? Here's the answer. I use a combination of business impact, urgency, and resource availability to prioritize. First, I align with leadership to understand the strategic importance of each task. Then, I evaluate dependencies and technical risks. For example, if two features are competing for the same resources, I'll recommend focusing on the one with higher customer impact and clearer dependencies. I also ensure stakeholders are updated on trade-offs. Tip: emphasize frameworks like RICE, reach, impact, confidence, effort, or Moscow, must have, should have, could have, won't have, to show structured thinking. Question 3. Can you describe a time when you managed a program with shifting priorities? Here's the answer. In my previous role, a product pivot meant our roadmap changed mid-project. I quickly re-evaluated the program scope with engineers and product managers, identified what could be paused, and created a new phased rollout plan. By communicating transparently with stakeholders, we managed to deliver the most critical features on time while keeping team morale intact. Tip: share real-world examples showing adaptability. Employers want to see how you handle ambiguity and change. Question 4. How do you handle conflicts between engineering and product teams? Here's the answer. I believe in finding common ground through structured communication. For instance, if engineering says a feature will take longer than expected but product insists on an earlier release, I facilitate a discussion where engineers explain technical constraints in simple terms and product explains business impact. Often, we agree on a phased approach or alternative solution. My role is to mediate and keep the program moving forward. Tip: show diplomacy, highlight listening, empathy, and problem-solving skills. Question 5. How do you measure the success of a program? Here's the answer. I measure success using 3 categories: delivery, quality, and impact. Delivery is about whether we met the timeline and scope. Quality is whether the product met technical standards and had minimal bugs. Impact is about customer or business value. For example, one of my programs was judged successful not just because it shipped on time but because customer adoption exceeded expectations. Tip: don't stop at on-time delivery. Include metrics like adoption, customer satisfaction, and performance. Question 6. What tools and methodologies do you use to manage technical programs? Here's the answer. I use tools like Jira, Confluence, and Trello for tracking, and methodologies like Agile and Scrum for iterative progress. However, I don't believe in one-size-fits-all. For complex, multi-team projects, I often use a hybrid approach, agile at the team level and a more structured program management framework like SAFe or OKRs at the program level. Tip: mention both tools and methods, and emphasize flexibility depending on the organization's needs. Question 7. How do you ensure clear communication across technical and non-technical stakeholders? Here's the answer. I tailor communication to the audience. With engineers, I discuss technical details, dependencies, and risks. With executives, I provide high-level summaries, metrics, and trade-offs. I also use visual dashboards to make progress transparent. For example, I once created a program dashboard that used green, yellow, red indicators for each stream. This allowed executives to instantly see which areas needed attention. Tip: highlight adaptability and clarity. Visual aids are a strong bonus. Question 8. Describe a challenging technical problem you managed as part of a program. Here's the answer. During a cloud migration, we discovered a critical scalability issue mid-project. Instead of pushing ahead blindly, I paused the rollout, convened a task force of engineers, and worked with them to identify alternatives. We added a 3-week redesign phase, which delayed the program slightly but ensured the final system could handle future growth. That decision saved us from costly failures later. Tip: focus on problem-solving and long-term thinking rather than just short-term delivery. Question 9. How do you manage risks in a technical program? Here's the answer. I start by identifying risks early during planning. I categorize them into technical, operational, and business risks. For each, I assign owners and create mitigation strategies. For example, if there's a risk of dependency on an external vendor, I'll ensure we have a backup plan or negotiate stronger SLAs. Regular risk reviews are part of my program updates. Tip: use structured approaches, mention risk registers, mitigation plans, and escalation paths. Question 10. How do you balance short-term delivery with long-term technical vision? Here's the answer. I work closely with product managers and engineering leads to balance immediate goals with scalable architecture. For example, if shipping a feature fast requires technical debt, I make sure it's documented and scheduled for future resolution. I also push for building reusable components whenever possible. This ensures that speed today doesn't compromise sustainability tomorrow. Tip: employers want to see you can balance speed and quality without ignoring technical debt. Question 11. How do you motivate teams under tight deadlines? Here's the answer. I believe motivation comes from clarity and recognition. When deadlines are tight, I break down the program into smaller milestones so the team feels steady progress. I also acknowledge achievements along the way, no matter how small. For example, during a 3-month crunch period, I made sure to highlight weekly wins in team updates. This helped keep morale high despite the pressure. Tip: show leadership by focusing on transparency, encouragement, and appreciation. Question 12. What's the most challenging aspect of being a TPM? Here's the answer. The most challenging aspect is balancing technical depth with program-level visibility. A TPM can't be too buried in code nor too high-level. The challenge is to stay technical enough to make sound decisions while still focusing on coordination and delivery. I handle this by continuously learning about new technologies while also sharpening my program management skills. Tip: demonstrate self-awareness and willingness to continuously improve. Closing thoughts. A technical program manager interview tests both your technical understanding and your ability to manage large-scale programs. Employers want someone who can think strategically, communicate across teams, and adapt to constant change. The best way to prepare is to practice structured answers, draw from real-life experiences, and demonstrate a balance of technical and managerial skills. Remember, clear communication, structured prioritization, and adaptability are the hallmarks of a strong TPM. If you can bring these qualities into your interview, you'll not only answer confidently but also show interviewers that you're already thinking like a true technical program manager.